Following on from that then, we've got Joseph Flagg, who is a Senior Consultant for Upshot. They've done quite a lot of work around digital transformation with Football Foundation, and again, more practical examples of how you take kind of what Chris has just said and turn it into something really relevant using technology. So,
Thanks for the introduction, Yvonne. I'd like to say what a great event it's been today. It's been clear from the programme of speakers that digital and technology is at the forefront of supporting the sport and physical activity sector in delivering positive outcomes, and in particular, helping them prove they're delivering the outcomes they're intending to deliver. Upshot is one of the systems out there that's available for organisations to do this. And for those of you that haven't heard of it before, I'd like to give you a quick introduction. Upshot's a tool used to manage, monitor and evidence the success of community projects. And we were actually built by and owned by the Football Foundation, which is the UK's largest sports charity. Now, over the next sort of 25 minutes, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on exactly what Upshot does. I thought what would be more interesting is to cover a bit about how Upshot really kick-started the Football Foundation's digital journey and touch on some of the sort of successes we had, but also the challenges we faced along the way and how we overcame them, particularly when programs and strategies change. So, to find the start of our digital journey, you need to go back to 2009. At the time, the Football Foundation was giving out around £40 million worth of grants annually for two key programmes. The first of those programmes was our community scheme, and this is where we gave out high-value grants to a range of charities, community organisations and football clubs to deliver football-based projects with a social goal, whether that be improving, reducing crime, improving education or health and well-being. The second programme that's one of our main programmes is our facilities investment, which you might be more familiar with today. And this involves us investing in mostly the top 40% deprived areas and building new artificial pitches, as well as maintaining and improving grass facilities and supporting facilities such as changing rooms and pavilions. Upshot itself as a system stems from the community's side of things, where we have most trouble actually collecting information on the success of those projects. And this was a problem for us because we really needed to report back on the outcomes that were being delivered to our funding partners, who are Sport England, Premier League and the FA. So, at the time, what I thought would be good to go through is a little bit about what we really wanted to do with our reporting. Like many charities, we had a sort of outcomes framework and we wanted to be able to link that back to our funders' strategies. So just to take you through, in 2009, what we really wanted to be able to do was know what our funding partner strategies were. I'm using a bit of a more up-to-date example here of the DCMS outcomes. And we wanted to fund projects that were going to deliver outcomes that helped us achieve our funding partner strategies, whether that be things like increasing physical activity of inactive people or increasing positive attitudes among young people. We also then wanted to know how these link back to our funders' strategies. And then in turn, we wanted to know what these organisations were actually delivering to achieve these outcomes. So if they were delivering a walking football session, that might be linked back to them increasing physical activity of inactive people, whereas their mentoring programmes linked back to them increasing positive attitudes among young people. And the final thing for us as a funder, which was really critical, is that we actually had oversight of what success looked like, and we really wanted to be able to see performance indicators. We wanted to know that quantitative stuff around simply how many people were turning up or how many sessions were being delivered, but also the softer, more qualitative stuff around the quality of feedback, survey feedback, and progression-based things like people moving into regular participation or moving into education, employment, training. But in reality, at the time, what we had was this: huge amounts of paperwork. And the main reason for this was our reporting process involved an annual report where all these organisations sent back all the information on what they had done. Now, a consequence of that is that once a year, you're inundated with huge amounts of paperwork. We were funding a diverse range of organisations who were all delivering different outcomes, so then to actually report and analyse this in a consistent way was extremely time-consuming for us as a funder. Another real big problem was that this sort of annual reporting is always looking back on information that's effectively out of date, whereas we wanted to see what was happening in real time. And we're also aware for us as a funder For the deliverers on the ground, they were also experiencing issues in collecting this data in the first place. We knew that a lot of the organisations we gave funds to were struggling to collect the information. Some were lucky enough to have systems, others might be using Excel, many were simply using paper-based collection methods. And at the end of the day, for some organisations, they were spending more time over particular reporting periods on paperwork than they were delivering their projects. So we looked at this and thought, this really isn't working. And hang on a minute, it's the 21st century. Surely we can use technology to solve some of these problems and help the organisations we fund. So this is when we decided to build Upshot. So we made the decision to embark on a digital project. But what we really wanted to do before we actually started building anything was make sure that we were going to solve the problems of ourselves and also the organisations we gave grants to. So we did a big research piece and went out and found what the problems were and what we really wanted to achieve. We spoke to many of our staff, but also the organisations we gave grants to. From our perspective as a funder, we made some key conclusions. What we really wanted to be able to achieve with a digital tool was have up-to-date and complete information, so we knew we were reporting on the full picture. But we also wanted to really critically see live performance. We wanted to know in real time whether an organisation was struggling so we could intervene and support them or celebrate success in real time. We also wanted information all in one place so it's easy for staff to log on to one central platform to both programme, manage and report on the success of these organisations, rather than looking around for multiple spreadsheets across different places. And really critically, we wanted to be able to measure change over time and have that recorded in a consistent format. From our deliverers' perspective, it was much of the same in terms of live data, but we also really wanted to solve some of their problems. And we knew that for this to be successful, the system needed to be really easy for them to actually enter information and save them more time compared to the traditional methods. We also, in line with this, wanted to just make their lives easier to report back to us. None of that annual reporting where people are rushing to put together information. And finally as well, we didn't want to just be that person or that funder that provided a tool and said, here, plug in your numbers, and it all came back to us. We wanted to give them something that really benefited them, allowed them to use all the tools within it, show how good they were, get more funding from elsewhere, and become more sustainable in the process. So, we then went about, we made these conclusions, and we also realised there are a few other critical things for us to successfully implement a digital system. We decided to build Upshot ourselves, but we realised we didn't have the expertise in-house to actually develop a system. So the first task was actually looking for a partner to support us with this. And we ended up working with a digital agency called Torchbox, who do digital for good. The next step was actually, we've got this agency, but to build something great, we're going to need some investment. The final thing that's really critical for this to be a successful project was actually buy-in. Without buy-in from top to bottom, we were never going to have any success. We needed buy-in from our trustees and our executive who were going to grant the funds and put this project make this project start, but we also needed buy-in from all the staff within the Football Foundation who are going to be using it and the staff at the community organisations on the ground that were going to be collecting data in the first place. And this was really fundamental to the success of any digital project. So we did all of this and we got the buy-in we required, and we then went about building a system. It took us a couple of years and we piloted along the way before we launched in 2011. And what we ended up with was a real game changer for us. We now had a system that allowed the organisations that we were funding to quickly collect things like registers in a much more time-efficient manner than previously. And in turn, as a funder, we could get a live performance dashboard of how well they are working towards those KPIs. But we also realised that it wasn't just quantitative measures that were really critical. We needed to know the full picture of the success of these projects. And we built in the ability to track individuals' progress over time and record softer evidence such as photos and media. And what did this now mean for us if we look back at that outcomes framework I showed you earlier? Well, we actually now had the final piece of this. We had the tool to collect this information in a systematic and consistent way. whether that be through recording registers into Upshot or collecting survey data or softer evidence such as testimonials and progression-based information. And building on this success in terms of implementing Upshot, we looked at other areas of the charity that could really benefit from digital systems. And again, in partnership with Torchbox, we actually built 2 additional systems, which the foundation still use today, which have really helped us. And I just want to go over these really quickly to give you a bit of an idea. So on the back of Upshot being built, we then looked at other areas that were sort of touch points with our grant applicants. And actually, we realised the whole application process was very time-consuming and paper-based. So what we decided to do was build a grant management system called GrantShot, which just made that whole process a lot more simple. It allowed applicants to log on day or night to see the progress of their application and the progress of their claims once the application had been approved. And this made a really nice tool for the people on the ground actually applying for a grant. But it also had a knock-on effect of supporting us internally with our grant management and streamlined the whole approval process. The second tool that we've built, which you might be more familiar with, is PitchFinder. PitchFinder is a database of pretty much all the football facilities across England. And essentially, the Football Foundation had all this information on a spreadsheet in a back closet somewhere. And what we realised was surely we can support the sector and the football sector and community by making this free and public in a nice, neat and tidy way. And PitchFinder is now a free tool where you can log on, you can go online, you can enter a postcode, you can find all the football facilities in close proximity to that postcode, and it will give you additional information such as disability access, changing rooms and parking. It's been really successful. We've got over or around 250,000 visits annually to the website. So everything was going great for us. We had 3 systems that really saved us time, and we moved away from that paper-based systems. However, there's always a but, and there was, sorry, let me rephrase that. But what happened for us was actually strategies changed. And what happens when strategies change? You need to adapt. For us, it was really interesting to hear from Sport England and DCMS earlier today, updating us on the progress of their strategies. And actually, for the Football Foundation in 2013, we had a strategic change. It was realised that actually the foundation was having most positive impact through its facilities investment, and it was no longer necessary to deliver communities programmes. What did this mean for Upshot? We now had a system we had built that was working really effectively, but we no longer funded communities programmes. Well, luckily for us, we had always built the system with the intention of servicing the wider sport and physical activity sector. We knew that actually we needed to invest heavily to build something that was really good. And in order to do this, we could service the wider sport sector and provide them benefit as well, providing them a system at the fraction of the cost of building their own. And we're now used by over 750 organisations across both the sport and non-sport sector. You can see a few on screen up there. And these vary from local authorities, universities, and international sport for development charities. But we still had a challenge on our hand. While we had a system that was openly being used really well by the sports sector, it still wasn't working for us internally at the foundation, given we are now focusing on facilities investment. And we looked at how we could actually overcome this challenge and still use Upshot within the Football Foundation. And there were 2 key things we identified. First of all, we looked at a few sort of quick wins in terms of how we can adapt the system to make it better for us reporting on the outcomes of our facilities programmes, while also supporting all those other organisations that were now using Upshot. The first thing we did was look at one of our smaller grants programmes called Grow the Game. Grow the Game involves giving small funds to local grassroots football clubs to develop new teams. At the moment, we've got a bit of a focus on developing new disability and women's teams. As part of that grant, the clubs are required to keep a football development plan so we can see their growth and strengthening as a club. This used to just be a piece of paper on someone's desk, but what we decided to do was build a living, breathing document into the system. And this made the whole process a lot more simple for reviewing and updating on a live basis. the knock-on effect was actually this also provided a development plan tool to all the other organisations using Upshot outside of the Football Foundation. The second way we looked at adapting the system was introducing the Sport England Active Places database to Upshot. And this really aligns well with the Football Foundation, as it meant that when people were logging sessions and adding the locations they were taking place at, they were all linked back to a unique identifier. And this meant for the foundation it could then report anonymously and in an aggregated way across its Football Foundation sites logged within Upshot. And the second way we sort of started to overcome this challenge, and it links back to what we just heard from Open Active, is around looking much more at integrating and collaborating. Maybe one system's never going to be able to do everything for you, and it's probably unrealistic to expect that. So we started to look at integrating Upshot with other systems that are out there to provide organisations with a wider set of tools. And within the foundation, we've looked at integrating with the whole game system, which is the FA sort of club registration. This made the process of reporting on team growth through Grow the Game a lot more simple, because it could automatically be updated into Upshot, and it meant that the clubs, who are pretty much all volunteer-led, didn't have to enter the same data twice. As you saw on the previous slides as well, we're working towards the Open Active data standards, and hopefully that will allow all the organisations using Upshot to be able to publish the information they enter into Upshot openly. And the third system is Data Hub, which is a large repository of physical activity data across the sports sector. This aligns really nicely with the Football Foundation because it's mostly focused on visits to facilities, and obviously we're now focusing on facilities investment. And on the back of this sort of integration and collaboration, we looked at what we could do moving forward to better report on the positive outcomes we're achieving through our facilities investment. And we started to realise that actually maybe Upshot is just one piece of that puzzle, and there's other tools out there that we can use to do this in a much more effective way. And one thing we did was actually start a digital steering group with our funding partners, and this was to ensure any future things we did aligned with their sort of expectations of us and any digital projects that they had going on. And off the back of that, we decided to create a new dashboard, which rather than developing entirely ourselves, this time we're going to bring in information from existing systems that are already out there. And I just want to take you a few of these things that we're piloting, because I think they're quite interesting from the perspective of using digital technology within the sports sector. So first of them, obviously a bit more common, but a lot of the facilities we fund commonly might be schools or might not traditionally have access to booking systems. They might be just collecting information through bookings through email or through telephone. And what we've looked at piloting in partnership with Open Play and My Local Pitch is piloting booking systems at those sites that wouldn't traditionally have access to it. All this information feeding into a new dashboard. And looking along this, the next thing is video capture systems, a bit more of an innovative new way of capturing data, and we've done this in partnership with Sheffield Hallam University. And there's two, I know it sounds a bit big brother, but there's two main ways we've been looking at using video capture systems. The first is simply to collect throughput at the facilities that we've built. Obviously, we don't have direct contact with any of the participants anymore because we're not delivering community projects. So this could be a good way to accurately collect participation levels. The other way has been using camera technology to identify areas of the pitch that might require further maintenance and investment, so we can secure that facility for a longer period of time. The next method we've been using, and again this is linking back to not having any direct contact with participants, is looking at deploying happy or not buttons across some of the sites. And this is still in a pilot phase, but you'll see them in sort of supermarkets or at airports where there's a big green and red button. And we put some questions out and just been getting people using the facilities, hitting those buttons to provide feedback. And this has provided a really nice way to actually collect insight into how these facilities are being received within the community itself. And the final thing we've looked at feeding into our new dashboard is actually tools that we are already using, and this sort of comes a bit full circle. We've realised that actually Upshot still has a really important place in our digital systems, because what it does do is provide really rich information on the outcomes being achieved. And actually, we just need to find a way to facilitate the use of it by the community organisations that are now using the facilities we've built. So, I hope that gives you a bit of a tour of our sort of digital journey. I'd like to summarise by saying, obviously, at the foundation, we've been lucky enough to invest in some of our systems, but what we've tried to do is then provide a really good system at the fraction of the cost of sort of building your own. And looking more at our systems in the future, we're actually looking more at bringing in existing software that's already out there rather than reinventing the wheel. And it is a journey that we've been on through developing all these systems. And I know you usually start a presentation with a definition, but I thought looking back on this and reflecting what I've been through, it provides quite a nice sort of summary. So I'll read this out. Digital transformation is the integration of technology into all areas of the business, fundamentally changing how you operate and deliver value to customers. It's also a cultural change that requires organisations to continually challenge the status quo, experiment, and get comfortable with failure. And I think this is really sums things up nicely, particularly around cultural change. If you're implementing anything across your organisation, if it's open active or if it's a system used to collect data, you need to get that buy-in top to bottom for it to be successful. And you also need to challenge the old ways of working and learn from failure. I think Lisa this morning mentioned that it's really important with all the projects you're delivering that you actually learn from all those mistakes that you might make along the way to then deliver better physical activity projects, and it's exactly the same for implementing digital systems. I'll try to keep this presentation very much not plugging Upshot, but if you are interested in hearing more about learning from failure, we're actually holding a conference in partnership with the Sports Think Tank on the 19th of October called The F Word, and it's all going to be focused around what we can learn from failure with lots of great speakers, so feel free to check that out online. If you've got any questions about Upshot, feel free to come and speak to me afterwards. I'll be hanging around. But yeah, thank you for listening.